Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Artless Dialogue. Hi Sound,
Hello.
how you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, not too bad. Feels like ages since we spoke again, but comes around quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, that's true.
I think last time we spoke about the World Cup and
Yeah.
quite an interesting subject. So if you missed that one, you can catch a previous episode. This week, one thing I want to talk about, which is a lot more kind of, I guess, a bit more serious in the sense of the topic, is the World Economic Forum and some of the things they were focusing on as a future sort of next 10 years ahead.
Okay.
So often they get together. So this is kind of all the global leaders, and they're effectively trying to go around what's the thing that's we're worried about. So we talked last time about, being in the room when they talked about scenarios about the World Cup. This is probably another room I'd love to be a fly on the wall on. So no surprise, it kind of covered a few things. So first one was just general instability across the world.
Yep.
And they kind of talked about that from its instability in terms of political, and we see some of the changes in the states, and then there's conflict. We see conflict in Russia, Ukraine still ongoing. We've still got conflict in Africa and Gaza and Israel. So conflict is kind of not deteriorating; it's increasing. We've then got kind of instability in technology and the markets, like the labor market, because we've got things like AI coming in and sort of potentially kind of disrupting in a positive way, but also creates challenges for countries, because if you have a labor force and then suddenly we're saying, actually, this thing can do what 100 people could do, then it creates a challenge for you, because there's always going to be that blip where unemployment becomes a problem till you reskill the labor force. We saw it, when certainly in the UK, when coal mining stopped, and you suddenly had, lots and lots of people struggling for work, and then we transitioned into, other work, and
Mm.
now, unemployment rates in the UK are pretty good in the scheme of things because people retrained.
Yeah.
And no doubt that blip will occur again when AI comes in. And then the other one that's kind of impacting is climate. And I read some kind of interesting numbers and that they'd used. And one of the numbers was, the annual cost of climate is approximately 436 billion. And and by that they mean, so if you think about the LA fires, they would attribute that to a climate change event, because they're saying, well, actually, that we see the temperature rising by a degree every year. So if it's rising too quickly, then the nature's going to react to that. I.e., you've got dry forests and grasslands that are going to be very susceptible to that, or it could be high water levels or
Mm.
rising seas, and that creates an impact to it.
Yeah.
So it was one of these ones where not never a positive conversation. It's always things that you read it and you're like, oh my goodness,
Mm.
what a worry. And then the last one was and something we're hearing very recently, this word, even Mr. Trump said it was his favorite word in the dictionary, which is tariffs.
Mm.
And essentially it's kind of like effectively old school trade wars
Yeah.
happening, but much more publicly.
Okay.
And you'll have seen sort of Trump using tariffs to almost sort of manipulate Mexico into taking additional deportees, and basically said we're going to add 20% tariffs onto everything. And then within 24 hours, the Mexican government kind of said, okay, right, we succeed, we give up, right, we'll take the deportees. And he's trying a similar tactic with China, and so trade wars are now very transparent, whereas before they were obviously there and countries were competing, but it wasn't as obvious and as blatant. So the sum of it was that there's a lot of disruption coming in the next 10 years, whatever industry you work in. And they didn't necessarily have an answer, which is always worrying because they never do. But they talked about agility being key, because agility and resilience are the two things, which is your ability to respond to something bad happening and how quickly you can recover from it, but at the same time, how flexible are you as an organization, a company, an individual to respond to kind of changing environment? So that was kind of, a sum, what they were discussing.
I think that's a lot to pick apart, and
Yeah,
that's quite relevant to us right now. Even if you look at the past 10, even 20 years from the early 2000s,
yeah,
the world has been changing quite much. It's becoming more complex, it's becoming dynamic, and it's changing every couple of years. Um,
yes,
3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we couldn't imagine ChatGPT, and I think now everyone's using some form of it in their work or personal lives.
yes,
Um, it's changed the way we search for things, how we compile information, and even
yeah,
write stuff. So if you look at conflicts, of course, there's the world's always been in a state of conflict at some point or another throughout its history.
yeah,
Um, Climate change as well, the new industries, the new technologies, and the work that is happening in that industry is quite different and
yeah,
going up fast. Well, my thoughts are that we're pretty agile. Humans are pretty, we're quick to learn how what benefits us, learn new
yeah,
skills,
yeah,
and
yeah,
adapt to environments. And we've been doing that for hundreds and thousands of years.
yep, yep,
We did that when the internet first came, and
yep,
so fast, internet companies, new business models. Same
yeah,
thing is
yeah,
happening with AI right now. Same thing happened with climate change. So
yeah.
I think while it's very important to understand that the world is changing,
And so just on that point, and do you think um, everyone is that quick on AI, or is it the small, fortunate few? And if you think about countries that are, especially developing countries that are struggling with some of this infrastructure, do they just get left further behind almost? Because you need there's certain things you need before you can truly leverage AI. You need technology platforms. You need the processing power. There's this investment and R&D required. So it's almost like, does that give an unfair advantage to some, or not? Do you think?
I think it's a mixed bag.
Yeah,
If you look at technology and developing countries, a lot of technology skill sets, technological knowledge is coming, or technological workforce is coming from developing countries. You look at
yeah, yeah,
India
yeah, yeah.
and,
True,
and so
true.
forth. And at the same time, so there is a chance that they're working on things and they're
Yeah,
developing things, or at least building the skill set.
yeah,
But then there's the other side of thing as well. And that is, so while you say that it is expensive to have that processing power and technology, they
yeah,
might not be at the cutting edge.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
agree with you on that. But at the same time, regulation is a big thing. So
Yes.
if you look at the developed world, if you look at Europe, if you look at the United Kingdom, if you look at the US, there's a lot of regulation around AI, or at least it's being
Yeah, yeah. It's
developed,
starting to
right?
becoming. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
What data you're using, what
yeah,
outcomes, how much
yeah,
to
yeah,
rely
yeah,
on outcomes, and so forth. The regulation isn't that strong in developing
yeah, yeah,
countries.
yeah,
So
yeah,
while there is a risk of negative outcomes, there
yeah.
is an opportunity for more experimentation.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point actually, because when we think about mobile banking when it first came out, actually Western countries were slow to take up mobile banking because there was a trust issue, there was a cultural issue because they were so familiar with physical banking,
Yeah.
and physical banking had such weight, like especially like in UK, States, and Europe. A banker was like, wow, you've made it if you're a banker in this pinstripe suit. Whereas in
Security, rules,
security, yeah, yeah,
prestige,
yeah,
high street.
exactly. Yeah, a big vault with all your cash in it. You felt safe.
Yep.
Whereas actually developing countries didn't really have that infrastructure, and so actually they were very quick to go onto mobile banking and adapt to it because they didn't really have the cultural hang-ups that we did. And that actually to them it was, I've got accessibility, much improved accessibility because I can access my mobile phone wherever I am. And so you actually saw, an acceleration of that. And as a result, a lot of the innovation into mobile banking, payments and P2P payments and all this stuff started, in the African continent and Southeast Asia and stuff. So they were actually doing this way ahead of, where we were,
Yeah.
because we had the technology, but we just didn't have the cultural shift required. And even on contactless, I remember contactless technology was available a long time ago, and for about 5 years, I remember the days of a certain bank spent so much advertising it, and it just didn't take up
Hmm.
because merchants had their contactless machine, but they would hide it under the counter
Okay.
because people didn't want to use it because people were just worried that my card, someone could just take my card
Yes.
or just walk past me and tap it. So they're back to that kind of cultural point.
Yeah.
Whereas contactless in other parts of the world, flew, because they were like, wow, this is great. I could just do, it's quick and it's easy. So no, I think it's a really good point. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an advantage just because you've got the technology. There's a whole shift of mindset to happen at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And on the point of developed versus developing, I read somewhere that climate change will most impact developing countries based on their
Yes.
geographic location. Um,
Yeah.
and humans solve problems that come to them, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if a certain country is likely to be, or a certain region is more likely to be impacted by something negative, they're more likely to come up with a solution for it.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, so if there's a doubt,
Yeah.
water scarcity in a certain region, it's most
Yeah.
likely they'll come up with a solution. So,
Yeah.
in terms of developed and developing countries, there's an opportunity over there for new products and new businesses and new technologies to
Yeah.
solve problems that are beginning to show up over there. And
Yeah.
if you look at investments, at the end of they say follow the money, right? And
Yeah.
investment growth and returns and new exciting startups are being shown all over the world. The
Yeah. Yeah.
scope of where to invest and where good companies are popping up from has increased from certain countries to all over the world. And
Yeah.
I think it just goes to show that, as you said, mentioning in the start, that the uncertainties and problems we're facing, it's
Yeah.
going to be a global effort to
Yeah.
resolve them. And
No,
with
yeah. No, I agree, and I think like you said this earlier, Sal. Like they're not new problems. So conflict has been around for as long as two people existed on this planet. We just humans don't seem
don't
to kind
get
of
along.
live well, don't get along. There's a they'll find a reason to argue, whatever the reason is. So conflict's always been there, and as much as the climate sort of dangers are increasing, and we're seeing much more sort of extreme weather events, but we've always had extreme weather, or we've had earthquakes. So again, not new, but we are seeing it accelerate. Um, but I think that the probably the additional sort of accelerant, almost, speaking chemistry, that's there now is probably like things like true globalization in terms of the internet, social media, things like you can do something, you could start something in sub-Saharan Africa, and you could get it done the next day in the States, and it's done and it's live and it's a product out there. The same way a negative message spreads like a ripple across the world in minutes, and you hear stories about a thing that's happened somewhere else so quickly that you often don't get that reflective period that you used to get, where things were considered a bit more, and here it's just it's wild. So there is that. I think that's the slight difference compared to where we were in the past, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, etc.
The internet is a great equalizer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Anyone anywhere can know the same thing as you,
yeah,
um, and do the same stuff, because
yeah,
the internet is global. I was watching a show the other day, and they said that 20 years ago you used to build a product, and you used to be restricted to your geographical location or your physical
yeah, yeah, yeah,
reach to distribution
yeah,
systems. And
yeah,
now the distribution system is the World Wide Web.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, you could build a product here. Your first customer could be 2,000 miles away.
Yeah. And I think no, exactly, and I think that's kind of where the sort of these risks that the sort of World Economic Forum are talking about, they just accelerated, and they are happening a lot quicker than you would have had previously had a bit of time to kind of consider and try and mitigate and manage.
Yeah.
Now, when the thing happens, whether it's a run on the bank, people can just go online and empty their accounts. that never used to happen before, or it's conflict. You'll see it now. I mean, if you're on the internet, you'll hear two to three to five sides of the same story positioned so differently. So
Yeah.
as an individual who's then trying to understand, where good, bad, or indifferent is very difficult to impossible. And therefore, where people would have supported someone and it was a single message. So, it's funny because I was listening to an old radio station, some 80s music, because I'm showing my age now, so, but and it was like Live Aid was on, and I don't know, that's definitely before your time, Sal. You're way too young. But that was like, it was a group of famous pop stars who sang a song because it was Africa and it was about drought and famine there.
Mm.
So it was a single clear message that nobody contested.
Mm.
And the message was delivered, on television, so it was like a sledgehammer message, right? It was very clear, very, no debate. Now it's very difficult to get that kind of message across
Yeah.
because everyone's got a counter view. So if you're then sitting here in the UK and you go, I actually want to help someone, it's hard to kind of go, right, well, what do I do without seeing it yourself?
Mm.
So in some ways we kind of, we're globalized, but in other ways, because of social media, you're almost forced to go, I'm going to trust the things I see and do around me, because then you're getting to the point where I'm slowly not trusting information that's out there because it's so varied and you can hear so many. So it's an interesting kind of place we are in at the moment. It's an odd one.
Yeah, no, I agree. With great opportunity, with advances in technologies, with the changing world, there are risks,
Yep.
and I guess it's up to us to navigate them as best as we can, and governments, organizations to find the safest and best ways to go forward.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up, Saud. So I think if anyone's got any clever answers to fix all of the world's problems, then put it on an envelope, put it
Send
on
it
a
over to
postcard
us.
rather, and send it to us. And yeah, we'll send it to the World Economic Forum and see what they do.
Good stuff.
Um, but perfect. Listen, as always, great pleasure chatting to you, Saud, and
Perfect.
hope you all enjoyed that. And talk soon.